Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, I should say. It's 8 o'clock on January 27th, 2026. I'm continuing work that I started years ago now. I started doing recordings for a live presentation of some of the letters I've written and Declaration of Sovereign Birthright that I've written from thousands of conversations that I've had with so many neighbors. My name is Dennis Meehan Jr. I'm broadcasting today from our farm in Edgecombe, Maine, which is mid-coast Maine. And I have a lot to talk about today. But I want to start right off with the Declaration of Sovereign Birthright and talk a little bit about where we are. As a family, as a community, we've been through so much. Each of us personally. And it's been difficult on all our families to deal with all of these challenges. Looking back at the beginning of our country, we're finding a lot of similarities to where we are now. We're in this place where we're in the process of recognizing one another. We're recognizing what freedom means to us and the celebration of that freedom. We're recognizing what's meaningful to us. In a world that's built for separation and control, we've been able to, each of us personally have been able to find that connection that we share in more meaningful ways every day. I know we're all tired. I've asked myself a million times how to start this. Do I communicate the pain that we all know so well, or the fire that we've all earned in those lifetimes of pain and distortion? I have no plans to communicate from all those systems of separation, from the right or the left, or any other means of separating you from your sisters or brothers. This message, this letter, this broadcast, and this declaration of sovereign birthright are designed to help us align with our truth here. And through communication, receive the truth of our being. When I started to write these documents, I was asking myself some questions about the nature of where we started our country, how we started our country. How do we get to a place where we can declare as a people anything? And what is it that we saw when we got to these lands that inspired that quest for freedom, true freedom? Freedom lived in a way that can be celebrated, and liberation. With this declaration of sovereign birthright, it's very important to recognize that we are not asking. We are not asking for permission. Slavery was abolished many, many years ago. We're going to get into that too. Let's just jump right into this thing. I've already prepared an introduction and many letters. I'll be uploading them very soon to share with the world. Some of these letters are written to, well, we have letters that are written to the president, to the Vatican and the Pope, to the Crown of England, letters to our president, letters to the American people, letters to the indigenous here on Turtle Island and beyond. And the culmination of all of it is the letter to our brothers and sisters across this great land. So we're just gonna get right into it. Declaration document. I am all that I am. Declaration of sovereign birthright. A living covenant with creation, freedom, and divine alignment. When in the course of human awakening, it becomes necessary for individuals, families, and nations to return to their divine essence, a sacred declaration must be made. We, the sovereign people of earth, do hereby declare our sacred union with the living Spirit of God, the eternal wisdom of nature, and the divine essence in all creation. This document is not a rebellion, it is a remembrance. It is not a protest, it is a proclamation. We declare, 1, the foundation. We are born free, not by permission, but by divine design. We are made in the image of God, each one a living reflection of divine intelligence, love, and power. Our birthright is not granted by governments or laws, but by the Creator of all life, encoded in our being and reflected in every tree, every breath, and every river. 2, the reclamation. We reject all corrupt systems, laws, and corporations that knowingly or unknowingly poison our air, soil, water, or food. Genetically alter seeds for profit and control. Destroy mycelial networks and ancient ecosystems. Manufacture illness through chemical agriculture and pharmacology. Harvest human attention and labor without reciprocity. We declare these actions crimes against humanity, and we invoke the light of truth to expose them. Let this be known. We no longer consent to any system that severs humanity from nature, spirit, and soul. 3, crimes against humanity. The use of glyphosate, atrazine, and synthetic pesticides linked to cancer, infertility, and hormone disruption. Production and distribution of PFAS, known as forever chemicals, contaminating water and human bloodstreams. excessive pharmaceutical dependency while suppressing natural cures and plant medicines, neurotoxic preservatives and additives in food and medicine, massive soil degradation and microbial collapse through monoculture and tillage. These substances, systems, and structures have directly contributed to a global rise in inflammation, autoimmune disorders, neurological diseases, infertility, and spiritual disconnect. 4. The Declaration. We now reclaim our sovereignty by aligning with natural law, divine will, and living truth. We stand in communion with God, Spirit, and the great I am, union with earth, water, fire, air, and ether, harmony with fungi, plants, animals, ancestors, and future generations. We restore our bodies through regenerative farming, wild foraging, sacred ceremony, breath, water, light, and love. We commit to planting and sharing non-GMO heirloom seeds of life, using mycoremediation, bioremediation, and phytoremediation, living in respect and sacred reciprocity, sharing our abundance, wisdom, and technologies for all. This declaration is alive. It is not static. It breathes, evolves, and expands as we do. Let it be sung, spoken, and carried to every land, to every council, to every altar and seedbed. Let it be the covenant of all who walk in remembrance. We do not seek permission to live free. We recognize that we already are and that we always were. In the living name of I Am, in honor of creation, we declare this day the beginning of the age of regeneration. Signed, Dennis Meehan, 1/27/2026. Signed in spirit and sovereignty, the people of the earth, for the children, for the water, for all that lives. The human plant, divine connection across time, long before modern systems, before the rise of empires and ideologies, there stood the sacred right of nature. Across cultures, epochs, and continents, from the rites of the Denisovans and ancient shamans to the medicine bundles of the Iceman and the first fires of early tribes, humanity walked in divine union with the earth. The use of sacred plants, including cannabis, mushrooms, and holy herbs, form the foundation of communion with spirit. These were not recreational acts, but deeply spiritual ceremonies, encoded into the origin stories of nearly every tradition on earth. From the tree of life in Genesis, to the soma of Vedic hymns, to the anointing oils of Christ, the human plant has always been a bridge between body and soul, heaven and earth. We recognize the universal role of sacred plant communion in the origins of every major religion and spiritual practice. The wisdom encoded in plants and fungi as carriers of divine frequencies and guidance. That ritual use of sacred plants is a birthright, not a criminal act. That reconnecting with these gifts is essential for spiritual, emotional, and physical regeneration. We restore their role in our societies not as escape, but as education, initiation, and healing. We declare this natural communion to be sacred and protected under divine law. It is our spiritual inheritance and a tool for awakening, remembrance, and planetary stewardship. Supporting document, Declaration of Sovereign Birthright, in-depth references, science, and historical context. One, the endocannabinoid system, ECS, and cannabis science. The ECS is a vast signaling network in the human body responsible for regulating homeostasis. When nourished by cannabinoids, particularly from cannabis, the ECS activates key healing functions. Five cancer-fighting functions of ECS with cannabis support. Apoptosis, programmed death of cancer cells. Anti-angiogenesis, restricts blood supply to tumors. Anti-proliferation, prevents abnormal cell reproduction. Anti-metastasis, stops spread of malignant cells. Immune modulation, enhances immune system intelligence. Neurodegenerative protection. Cannabis has been shown to remove amyloid beta plaque from the brain, a central factor in Alzheimer's disease. It acts as a neuroprotectant, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory. Helps restore neural activity in Parkinson's, epilepsy, and multiple sclerosis. Intractable neurological diseases affected: ALS, Tourette's, Huntington's, autism, neuropathic pain, PTSD, and seizure disorders. Key studies: Salk Institute, THC reduces beta amyloid plaque, 2016. NIH, cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. U.S. government patent number 6630507. Israel's Meshulam Institute, ECS and inflammation. Number 2, carcinogenic foods and medicines, sources and impact. Overview. The modern food and pharmaceutical industries are saturated with toxins, chemicals that cause cancer, hormone disruption, neurological damage, and immune dysfunction. When these toxins are combined, whether in diet, environment, or prescription, their effects are compounded. This leads to accelerated degeneration of cellular systems, compromised immunity, and chronic inflammation across all organ systems. Many people experience multiple exposures simultaneously, eating pesticide-laced foods while taking medications that impair detoxification, inhaling polluted air while using synthetic personal care products, drinking water contaminated with PFAS while experiencing nutritional deficiencies. This layering of toxic inputs creates a cumulative burden on the human system, contributing to conditions like autoimmune disorders, cancers, and neurodegenerative diseases. Page 4, signed Dennis Meehan, Jr., January 27, 2026. Chemical testing on Hawaiian soil, a case study in environmental injustice. Hawaii has been used as a live chemical testing ground by major agrochemical companies, including Monsanto, Bayer, DuPont, Dow, Syngenta, and BASF. These companies sprayed experimental pesticides, often unapproved and highly toxic, on neighborhoods. In Kauai, the town of Waimea has documented pesticide drift causing school evacuations and long-term respiratory issues in children. Over 80 plus different chemicals have been tested or sprayed, often without full public knowledge. Sources and further reading: Center for Food Safety Report, Pesticides in Paradise, FoodDemocracyNow.org, Hawaii Public Radio, coverage on chemical drift and school impacts, Earth Justice and PANA, P-A-N-N-A, lawsuits and advocacy against experimental spraying. This is just one example of how the agrochemical industry places profit over planetary and human health. Expanded list. Stronger pain pharmaceuticals and long-term damage. Opioids, oxycodone, fentanyl, hydrocodone, highly addictive, respiratory suppression. Crops planted next to schools and residential. Sprayed with poison. Gut microbiome damage, hormonal dysregulation, immune suppression, increased cancer proliferation from long-term immunosuppression. Methadone and Suboxone, long-term cognitive fog and adrenal fatigue, liver toxicity, and QT prolongation, heart rhythm risk. Gabapentin and Lyrica, not true opioids, but often co-prescribed, associated with increased suicidal ideation, dependence, and neurological disruption. Tramadol, often considered mild, but has a high risk of serotonin syndrome, seizures, and addiction. These drugs mask pain while impairing detoxification systems and degrading natural healing responses. Overview. The modern food and pharmaceutical industries are saturated with toxins, chemicals that cause cancer, hormonal disruption, neurological damage, and immune dysfunction. These substances are often hidden in common foods and medications, despite mounting scientific evidence. Toxic agrochemicals, glyphosate, Roundup, primary ingredient in Roundup, classified as a probable human carcinogen by the WHO in 2015. Over 280 million pounds are sprayed on U.S. crops every year. Residues are commonly found in wheat, oats, corn, soy, and even organic honey, linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, endocrine disruption, and birth defects. Atrazine, one of the most widely used herbicides in the U.S., known to cause endocrine disruption, breast and prostate cancers, converts male frogs to females in laboratory studies. Paraquat and 2,4-D, associated with Parkinson's disease and organ failure, still legal in many farming systems despite bans in over 30 countries. Dangerous processed food ingredients. Processed meats, nitrates, and nitrates used in cured meats are linked to colorectal cancer. Refined sugars and HFCS feed cancer cells and fuel metabolic disease. Hydrogenated oils and trans fats are linked to heart disease and aggressive cancers. Artificial sweeteners, aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, associated with brain tumors, lymphoma, and insulin disruption. Artificial sweeteners, aspartame, I just read that. Preservatives, BHA, BHT, TBHQ, recognized as carcinogens and endocrine disruptors. Food dyes, red 40, yellow 5, blue 1, behavioral impacts in children, and possible DNA damage. MSG, monosodium glutamate, neurotoxic, linked to headaches, anxiety, and metabolism issues. Cancer-causing pharmaceuticals, chemotherapy drugs known to destroy healthy cells along with cancerous ones, associated with long-term organ damage, immune suppression, and secondary cancers. Common drugs like cyclophosphamide and doxorubicin are listed as human carcinogens. Statins, long-term use linked to liver toxicity, memory loss, diabetes, and potential carcinogenesis. Proton pump inhibitors, PPIs, medications like omeprazole linked to stomach cancer, kidney failure, and nutritional malabsorption. SSRIs and antidepressants, some linked to suicidal ideation and long-term neural disruption. Possible links to breast cancer via prolactin hormone dysregulation. Synthetic hormone therapies includes oral contraceptives and hormone replacement, such as Premarin, associated with increased risk of breast, ovarian, and uterine cancer. Fluoroquinolone antibiotics, Cipro and Levaquin, causes tendon rupture, nerve damage, mitochondrial dysfunction, and may contribute to cancer progression. Overprescribed painkillers. Acetaminophen in high doses is hepatotoxic and linked to increased cancer risk. NSAIDs contribute to gut lining deterioration. Conclusion: the intersection of toxic food systems and pharmaceuticals has produced a silent epidemic of chronic disease. It is essential to recognize the true cost of these inputs, not just to human health, but to ecosystems, soil, and future generations. Informed regeneration begins with informed rejection of what no longer serves life, and informed restoration of what was always sacred. Worst offenders in food: processed meats, nitrates and preservatives, group 1 carcinogens, refined sugar and HFCS fuel inflammation and tumor growth, artificial sweeteners linked to lymphoma and neurological damage. Food colorants, red 40, yellow 5, associated with behavioral issues and cancer. Preservatives, BHA and BHT, hormone disruption, and carcinogenicity. That's a tough one. Worst offenders in medicine: PPIs, such as omeprazole, increased risk of stomach cancer and dementia. Statins linked to liver damage, memory loss, and insulin resistance. SSRIs, long-term use linked to mood instability, memory loss, and suicidal ideation. Synthetic hormone therapy, known carcinogen with multi-generational effects. 3. Clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, coined by Dr. Ethan Russo. CECD theorizes that many modern diseases are linked to a dysfunctional or undernourished endocannabinoid system. which is the communication network, of course, linked to every cell in our body. Conditions associated with CECD: fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, anxiety and depression, autoimmune conditions. Why CECD matters. The ECS is nourished by omega-3s, omega-6 and omega-9, flavonoids and cannabinoids, all 21 amino acids. Our modern diets and toxin exposure impair ECX function. Replenishing the ECS restores body balance. More resources. Dr. Ethan Russo's Clinical Endocannabinoid Deficiency, 2004-2016. Project CBD Research Library, projectcbd.org. Raphael Mechoulam, the Mechoulam Institute in Israel. Sacred use of plant medicine throughout history. Cannabis, mushrooms, and entheogenic plants have served as spiritual sacraments in prehistoric Europe. A use of psychoactive herbs found in Denisovan cave settlements. Ancient Egypt, cannabis oils in sacred rites and embalming. India, Vedic tradition, soma, a divine drink linked to cannabis or ephedra. Indigenous Americas, tobacco, peyote, and mushroom sacraments used for prophecy and healing. Christian faith and mysticism. Anointing oils from Exodus contained cannabosum. These were not merely tools, they were gateways to divine alignment, revelation, and regeneration. 5. Integration with modern regenerative practices. Mycoremediation. Oyster, shaggy ink cap, and turkey tail mushrooms break down hydrocarbons and heavy metals. Phytoremediation. Hemp draws toxins and radiation from the soil, which has been used post-Chernobyl. Bioremediation. Use of indigenous microorganisms to restore soil ecosystems. Biochar, cover crops, compost teas, building long-term soil vitality. Outcome: cleaner water, restored soil biology, regenerative food and medicine, and nutrient density, decentralized local health solutions. Summary: this sacred remembrance is grounded in science, history, spirit, and truth. We do not reject science, we reject misuse and manipulation of science. We honor the original design of the human body on earth. We reclaim our right to heal naturally, commune spiritually, eat regeneratively, and live divinely. This is the body of evidence that supports the soul of our declaration of sovereign birthright. Declaration of Sovereign Birthright, the call to renewal. We arrive in a time foretold where the sacred documents of our people must not only be remembered, but reborn. This declaration of sovereign birthright is both an honoring of the divine rights we were created with and a living response to the long shadows that have fallen upon our families, our children, and our collective future. It was written into our founding documents that when any form of governance becomes destructive to life, liberty, or truth, it is not only the right, but the duty of the people to alter or abolish it. We stand here in that moment. We are not here to destroy, we are here to restore. This is our holy revision led by remembrance, truth, and sacred regeneration. We acknowledge with reverence the truths too long silenced, that our democracy has been manipulated, our bodies have been poisoned, our communities betrayed, and our rights trampled under systems built for profit, control, and suppression. The consequences of these systems of separation, propaganda, and subconscious programming have created generations of trauma, survival-based decisions, and reactive pain loops. These wounds perpetuate disconnection and confusion, leading us to recreate the very harm we seek to escape. Yet beneath this programming, our hearts have always yearned for remembrance, for the full brilliance of who and what we are. This document is the breath of that remembrance. It is a sacred invitation to reclaim our divine identity, to see through the distortions of fear and powerlessness, and to return to the presence of true union with Source, with nature, with one another. We are not broken. We are awakening. We are not separate. We are the living embodiment of light, truth, and love. A new breath rises. A living declaration unfolds. We declare in spirit and law, I am all that I am. Signed 1/27/2026, Dennis Moon Jr. Historical atrocities and collective healing. We honor the countless lives lost, the mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, sisters and brothers who endured these injustices, not as statistics, but as sacred beings who walked through unimaginable pain. We call their names into this declaration and bring their spirits into the healing light of remembrance and transformation. This document is dedicated to the memory and liberation of all whose lives were stolen, harmed, or silenced in the pursuit of power, profit, and control. We are their legacy, and we are here to reclaim the future. As part of this declaration, we must name and face the tragedies that have unfolded across this land and acknowledge their devastating human toll. Lyme disease in Plum Island. Over 476,000 Americans are diagnosed annually with Lyme disease, a debilitating illness often dismissed or misdiagnosed. Plum Island's historic use as a bioweapons testing facility off the coast of New York has raised serious concerns about engineered pathogens. The silence surrounding its origins has left families battling chronic pain without answers or adequate care. The opioid and fentanyl crisis. More than 1 million lives have been lost to overdoses in the United States. Aggressively marketed painkillers like OxyContin, followed by waves of fentanyl-laced street drugs, devastated communities and left families destroyed. Purdue Pharma and other companies profited while addiction soared. These crises continue to plague inner cities, suburbs, and rural areas alike. Autism, AIDS, and the rising neurological disorders. The rate of autism in children has skyrocketed to 1 in 36, reflecting an urgent health crisis. AIDS took more than 700,000 lives in the U.S. amid government inaction and stigmatization. Neurological disorders like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's have surged, while environmental and pharmaceutical causes are routinely ignored. or suppressed. Mercury in dental fillings. Mercury in dental fillings. Mercury, one of the most toxic elements on Earth, was used in amalgam dental fillings for decades, often placed in children's mouths. Its vapor exposure has been linked to neurological disorders and autoimmune conditions, with governments and dental associations slow to acknowledge the risks. Flint, Michigan water crisis. In 2014, a cost-cutting decision exposed tens of thousands of Flint residents, including children, to toxic levels of lead. Government officials falsified records, delayed solutions, and dismissed community concerns. The long-term health effects are devastating, and trust in public institutions was shattered. Fluoride in drinking water. Added to water supplies for decades under the guise of dental health. Fluoride is now linked to lowered IQ, thyroid dysfunction, and skeletal fluorosis. The continued promotion of mass medication through drinking water violates informed consent and disregards modern toxicological evidence. Toxic foods and medical products, from metal fragments in baby formula to hormone disruptors in personal care products, and forever chemicals like PFAS in food packaging. Corporate negligence and regulatory failure have poisoned what nourishes us. These chemicals bioaccumulate, harming fertility, immunity, and cognition. Geoengineering and environmental manipulation. Weather modification programs and aerosolized heavy metal spraying, commonly referred to as chemtrails, have been documented through both declassified government records and independent research. These practices alter the natural climate, contaminate soil and water with aluminum and barium, and disrupt ecosystems. Efforts to raise awareness are often dismissed despite mounting environmental and health concerns. Sources: U.S. Patent Office, Congressional Hearings on Geoengineering, Harvard Solar Geoengineering Research Program. Vaccines, pharmaceuticals, and pandemic truths. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed deep fractures in public trust. Informed consent was compromised, with citizens pressured into medical interventions, while questioning voices were censored. Vaccine injury reporting systems like VAERS documented severe adverse events, and governments signed indemnity clauses shielding manufacturers from liability. Pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer and Moderna generated record profits amidst global trauma. Sources: VAERS, BMJ, investigative reports, WHO contracts, FDA emergency use authorizations. 9/11 and Building 7. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost on September 11th, 2001. The collapse of World Trade Center Building 7, which was not hit by a plane, remains unexplained by conventional models. Independent architects, engineers, and survivors have called for a reinvestigation, citing controlled demolition evidence. The aftermath brought sweeping surveillance laws and foreign wars. Sources: AE911truth.org, NIST reports, project censored. The Pentagon and intelligence abuse. On 9/10/2001, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld announced $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon's budget. The next day, the accounting offices were destroyed. Across decades, intelligence agencies have carried out covert operations abroad and domestically, often outside congressional oversight. Sources: CBS News 2002, Government Accountability Office, Church Committee records. CIA drug and human trafficking. Investigations have linked CIA operations to drug trafficking during wars in Vietnam, Central America, and Afghanistan. Journalists like Gary Webb, whose work exposed the crack cocaine epidemic's CIA connections, were silenced. Human trafficking networks flourish under layers of bureaucratic inaction and complicity. Sources: Dark Alliance by Gary Webb, U.S. Senate reports, UNODC global reports. Sex and child trafficking. An estimated 25 million people are trafficked worldwide, including children abducted. Into rings hidden in plain sight. From the Jeffrey Epstein network to global cases of institutional abuse, these crimes remain largely unprosecuted. Survivors and advocates demand justice and protection. Sources: U.S. Department of State, Polaris Project, UN reports on trafficking. Generational wars. Wars throughout modern history, including both world wars, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, have been shown to benefit arms dealers, multinational banks, and industrial profiteers who funded both sides. These wars resulted in the deaths of tens of millions of people and left entire nations destabilized. Sources: War is a Racket by Major General Smedley Butler, U.S. Congressional Records. Mercury and lead in homes, asbestos in schools. Mercury-based thermometers, lead pipes, and asbestos insulation were used for decades despite early evidence of severe health risks. Children in schools inhaled asbestos dust, and families consumed lead-contaminated water. Chronic neurological damage, cancer, and developmental delays have resulted. Sources: EPA, CDC, American Journal of Public Health. JFK assassination and Executive Order 11110. President John F. Kennedy signed Executive Order 11110 to restore the Treasury's ability to issue silver-backed currency, challenging the private Federal Reserve's control. Months later, he was assassinated under highly contested circumstances. Numerous researchers suggest links between his assassination and secretive financial and military institutions. Sources: National Archives, JFK and the Unspeakable by James Douglas, Federal Register. Prisons for profit. Over 2 million Americans are currently incarcerated in the United States, making it the largest prison population in the world. This system disproportionately targets Black, Indigenous, and low-income communities through systemic over-policing, mandatory minimums, and private prison contracts incentivizing high incarceration rates. Families are torn apart, trauma cycles are perpetuated, and communities are destabilized for the sake of shareholder dividends and political deals. Sources: The Sentencing Project, Prison Policy Initiative, Human Rights Watch. Stolen native lands and broken treaties. The land we stand on was taken through warfare, forced relocation, and the continual violation of treaties made in bad faith. From the Indian Removal Act to the termination of tribal recognition and the seizure of sacred sites, indigenous peoples have endured centuries of displacement, genocide, and erasure. Of over 370 treaties made between the U.S. and the Native nations, nearly all have been broken. Reparations and land restoration are not optional. They are sacred responsibilities. Sources: U.S. National Archives, Native American Rights Fund, Broken Treaties Report by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Moments like Wounded Knee, the Trail of Tears, and the blankets laced with smallpox. These are among the most harrowing events in American history. At Wounded Knee, U.S. troops massacred over 250 Lakota Sioux. The Trail of Tears forced the relocation of 60,000 indigenous people, leading to thousands of deaths. Smallpox-infected blankets were knowingly distributed to tribes. These genocidal acts are part of the long-standing systemic erasure of Native nations. Sources: National Museum of the American Indian, Smithsonian Institute, U.S. National Archives. And yet through all of this, we have endured, survived, and risen. We have carried the truth in our bloodlines, our bones, and our stories. We are here to say never again. This is the time of divine reclamation. These injustices must be spoken into the light. Healing begins where truth is allowed to rise. We declare the sacred right to restoration, full restitution, and public acknowledgement. Truthful history taught in schools and preserved in national memory. Science not corrupted by profit. Food, water, and healing free from poison and manipulation. This is our time, this is our voice, and this is our sacred reunion with the land, the water, our ancestors, and each other. We move forward in tribal family unity, reborn through truth and love. We are not victims of fate. We are the awakening force of creation itself. Signed today by Dennis Meehan Jr., 1/27/2026. Thank you for your patience. I'm bringing it all together right now. Okay, that had some highlights that I'd like to go over in my next video. There's a whole bunch of things that I'm looking forward to going over immediately in the very next video. I'm going to take a short break and then I'm going to get right back to it. Thank you all for being here now and connecting in this time of regeneration.